So hello, everyone, and welcome to Social-Emotional Learning and the Zones of Regulation. My name is Erica Papier, and I'm the Director of Business Development at Smart City Kids. I'm also the parent of a rising 5th grade boy and 9th grade girl. We are truly appreciative that you took time out of your busy day to join us for this workshop. And we promise that you will find the session to be tremendously informative and you will leave with new tools for your parenting toolbox. I just want to take a moment and briefly introduce Smart City Kids so you know the extent of the services we provide for parents, students, corporations, and schools. For over 20 years, Smart City Kids advisors have guided students and parents through the admissions process for entrance into all grade levels, starting with the little ones in nursery school and continuing all the way through college admissions, and we include boarding schools and special education. We work with families throughout the New York area as well as across the globe for families who are relocating. Smart City Kids also has clients who are schools and corporations, and we provide guidance about parenting, education, admissions, and relocation. Our advisors offer parenting sessions where we help parents navigate issues that they are struggling with. Maybe this is something people attending today could perhaps be interested in taking advantage of. We also have a highly skilled group of experienced tutors who support students of any age and ability with subject work, executive function, and test preparation. And last but not least, we offer over 50 workshops a year, and we hope that you will continue to attend the sessions that we offer. So without further ado, I'm very excited to announce our speakers for today. First, Kathryn Ressa, also known as Kat. Kat is a speech-language pathologist, a parent-child educator, a pediatric feeding specialist, and the founder of Ressa Speech. Her experiences in education range from running language-based playgroups in a school setting, working as a one-on-one clinician with children birth through adolescence, to educating and empowering parents on all things childhood development. Our other wonderful speaker is Danielle MacCourtney. Danielle is a proud mother of 3, an occupational therapist of 15 years. Danielle founded Tiny Transformations in 2014, a concierge pediatric occupational therapy and physical therapy service that supports the pediatric population in home, school, and community in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. After graduating from the University of Scranton with a master's in occupational therapy, Danielle spent many years working at Rusk Institute at NYU Langone and the Hospital for Special Surgery. Danielle has been a pediatric therapist since the beginning of her career in 2008. She is passionate about occupational therapy, providing best practices and meeting the needs of the clients her team serves. So before I turn the floor over to Kat and Danielle, I wanted to share 2 promotions that we're offering to the parents who attend our session today. So first, Smart City Kids is pleased to offer 15% off of one package of 4 tutoring sessions or 4 parenting sessions. And Kat is offering 15% off a package of 5 parent trainings for speech and language concerns, or 15% off a package of 5 individual speech therapy sessions. So you can reach out to either of us. We'll make sure that you have our contact information by the end of the session. Okay, so without further ado, the floor is yours. I'm just going to start to share my screen so that everyone can view this wonderful presentation. Oops. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Okay, here is the beginning. So Kat, Danielle, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Erica, for the lovely introduction. So today we're going to talk about social emotional learning, which has gained a lot of traction in the past few years, the term, what it really means. And we're going to break it down from a speech pathologist perspective, as well as an occupational therapist. So let's start with what is self-regulation. So we hear that all the time now, like, oh, I'm not regulated in schools, conversation like that. So basically, self-regulation is the ability to understand and manage your behavior and responses. So if someone were to throw a water balloon at me right now, what would my response be, right? So managing my behaviors in that kind of instance. It can also be as simple as a newborn sucking their fingers as an infant. So it develops from birth into adolescence. And today we're going to focus on ages 3 to 10 when we refer to it. So it's really a crucial skill for development for these toddler, preschool, and child aged population, because this is really when they focus, they're developing it. So being regulated calls on many different skills. So it calls on your language, planning, your attention, your motivation, your sensory processing, and your cognition.
Okay, so just to go back, let's go back a few slides.
Sorry, let me know when,
Yeah, let me
when
go
to,
back to the
when
first.
to switch.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about the, sensory regulation is multifaceted. It is both, it's mental, social, and physical. It is very, very much dependent on how one interacts with others. There's pieces of it that are nature-based and also environmental. So what, just like we said about an infant, that is almost reflexive. Sucking is reflexive, and it is internally helping a child soothe. Whereas as we work toward adolescence, it's very much based on social responses. So I think a big takeaway before we really dive deep into what regulation looks like, dysregulation looks like, these are skills that are both innate, but also learned. So we have a great impact on helping our children build self-regulation skills. So I very much so think about my kids when I talk about self-regulation, because I see the direct impact of parenting, but I also see their innate responses. And then I see, as an OT, the ability to use my therapeutic use of self to help a child develop regulation. So, as Kat and I speak, the power of language, the power of movement, the power of modeling, all of this will be uncovered in this presentation, but it's one of those things where it's not a quick fix. It's very much over time and through repetitive interventions, repetitive modeling, and supporting our children to feel their best. So I think we'll move to the next slide. So what does regulation look like across the lifespan? Kat mentioned thumb sucking. Our children move from reflexive patterns all the way to adolescence and adulthood. And the biggest takeaway with self-regulation is emotional intelligence and emotional capabilities in relation to others. Regulation looks like a child self-soothing with their own thumb, with a fidget, with swaddling. We passively swaddle our babies to help them regulate themselves, to help them calm and feel organized. When you see a young child, that startle reflex, that calms internally, and you don't startle as much. Reflexive reactions disappear over time. However, what we're going to look at with dysregulation is when some of those fight or flight responses continue on and need more support. So regulation looks like the ability to come to the table and have a meal as a family without excessive needs of input. The ability to focus in school, transition between different centers, different subjects, different stimuli, the ability to move from recess back to the classroom, the ability to interact with a peer, maybe need to share and recover, the ability to play with peers, the ability to play goal-directed activities such as sports, and maybe getting hurt and recovering, not understanding the directions, but not shutting down. In adulthood, regulation looks like yoga. It looks like coffee. It looks like taking a break, taking a deep breath. These are regulatory functions of throughout the lifespan that until you really dive deep into how you feel, you almost don't even think about your own regulatory system. I always love talking to parents about this because I think we expect our children to behave a certain way or to respond a certain way. But sometimes it takes that pause to think, stop, feel, and think about how do we respond? What do we need to feel our best? I always talk to my parents about needing that 3 p.m. cup of coffee, where that's not necessarily the best regulatory strategy. Whereas maybe going to a yoga class, doing some stretching, taking a moment, reading a chapter of a book, getting off social media and the computer, those are all regulatory strategies. I think we can move on.
I'd just like to add, that was so well said, that as you said, you're the most important model. So as like when I think of self-regulation, how you respond, not just like physically and with your body's reactions, but what kind of language you use to describe as you're going through it, I think is really important.
Okay. So what does emotional dysregulation look like? I think this is when we see our children in these fight or flight states, these, the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic nervous system. When you are working within the sympathetic nervous system, you are using fight or flight reactions versus responses to the world around you. Words that describe dysregulation, anger, shutdown, absolute shutdown, fatigue, sleep, the inability to self-soothe and recover when frustrated, needing a lot of extra time to recover, to get back on task, hyper-focus, and the inability to transition. Some of our kids become really, these are some negative words that I don't love using, but like that rigidity, that they lack flexibility, and they need multiple cues because that is almost organizing for them. Big reactions, little problems, right? So that big response for a small problem. We're going to talk a lot about sensory processing, but it's very important to think about how our children feel their best and setting them up for success to reduce some of these things that we see physically and emotionally. I'll let Kat kind of speak more on the language, but it's very important to honor what we're seeing and then focus on intervention. Kat, did you want to share anything else about that?
No, I was just going to say, I think validating exactly what you see and kind of using like a statement rather than asking a question or placing any demand. Like, I see you're angry at that, to let the child know that you're accepting it in that moment. We'll get into more strategies later too.
Okay, so whenever I speak about sensory processing, self-regulation, I do talk to families about, what is the root of the regulatory challenge. Sometimes I refer to social work and more of a counseling need. A lot of families need more support than just individualized attention, individualized treatment for OT or speech. The family dynamic, the change within the home environment, the change of cues and environmental triggers, if you will. So we're going to dive into sensory processing and its impact on regulation. So we all have different sensory systems. I can tell you right now that I am more hypersensitive to vestibular input, auditory input. If my home is getting really loud, I could potentially be like, it's too loud. That is not necessarily the most appropriate response, but that is almost my automatic reaction to overstimulation. So when you think of your children and you think about their reactions or their responses, I want you to take a step back and think about sensory processing. How does your child interpret the visual system, the auditory system, the olfactory system, vestibular, tactile, and proprioception? I'm going to start with proprioception because it does directly impact introception. Introception is the internal physiological response to internal processes. So, do I have to go to the bathroom? Does my tummy hurt? Am I tired? Do I feel sick? Do I feel hot? This at our foundation sets us up for all the other things going on in our world. Without feeling our best internally, externally, we may have very fight or flight responses. We might have very little bandwidth to the world around us if we are overstimulated just within my own small world. So visual stimuli can be very overstimulating. Lots of colors, lots of movement, lots of kids like moving, doing. Auditory input can be very overstimulating. Lots of loud sounds, filtering out external stimuli, cues from teachers, parents, pets, siblings, TVs on in the background, tablets, water faucets running, crunching, chewing, crunching. So much is going on in in our kids' worlds that when we pause and we are able to think about where is the dysregulation coming from, we may be able to help them more. Obviously, I don't know, many of you are not therapists or this is not your world. So, we love our children. We want to give them the best. We want to give them so much. But when we go, when we don't pause to think what they need to feel their best internally, you might be seeing dysregulation. So sensory processing has a direct impact on regulation. If a child is seeking sensory input to help themselves feel their best, they may have very little bandwidth for others in their space, others' tone of voice, cues, and directions. If tactile input is so noxious that they have a hard time participating in fine motor activities, sensory activities, then a center that is challenging for them individually may be causing big reactions from their peers. So breaking down a child's sensory processing needs directly impacts regulation. A child that is hyposensitive to sensory input in their environments seek more. They seek crashing, they seek hanging, they seek movement. They are typically, they could be on the go. They want more. They want more of everything, to the point where it can seem dysregulating. It could look dysregulating. So we, as their parents, as their therapists, as their teachers, have to set them up for success from a sensory standpoint. And we'll talk about a lot of sensory strategies that directly impact regulation. So it goes hand in hand, because a child can't grab a cup of coffee. A child can't take a spin class or leave the room or take a walk if they need a break. They need to ask permission. They need to act a certain way in a classroom environment. There are expectations for their behavior that are they're taught, but unless they have the language on how their engine is running or how to express how they feel, we don't know how to give them what they need. So that actually probably segues into you, Kat, on language relations, right?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think, as a speech pathologist, it's it's so necessary to understand the sensory aspects, and not just saying sensory, but dividing it up into the subsystems. Because, if I'm treating a child and they're, say, dysregulated, they need to be moving constantly or jumping, or how effective and how engaging is my time going to be with that child? I need to meet the child's sensory needs first to make sure they're regulated and ready to engage, right? So I think knowing, and it looks so different in every child and every adult. It's like, okay, here's my child, Johnny, right? What are his signs that he's not regulated? And then focusing on those before you then, go into instruction or play a game or, have a meal. And I think those are all really important things to know, and but to just be attuned to, because it does change as your child develops too. So I think from a speech and language perspective, first, I want to make sure all of those sensory subsystems and needs are being met.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we can go to the next one, please.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start diving into, how to help. We're going to talk about language strategies, physical strategies, visual strategies, how to set your child up for success. What are some of the things we do as therapists to intervene and give these children self-regulation coping strategies? So before diving into the zones and the alert program, those are two programs that occupational therapists use, and we get certified in these programs, but they're very, very general programs, and they're, speech, all different interventions can be certified and use these programs. But it's important. I just want to give you the term of co-regulation before we start in, very particular strategies. Just the term co-regulation is the awareness of the caregiver or the adult on the child's regulatory system. So co-regulation is the ability to maintain a calm state when someone else or something else is somewhat dysregulating. So again, I smile because as a parent, it's so different as a therapist versus a parent. I'm able to maintain this therapeutic use of self in a session that is a lot harder for me to maintain as a parent. But I will make eyes with my husband at times and just say, do not engage, do not react, do not become dysregulated by the dysregulation right now. And that goes so far. The ability to maintain a calm, organized state when your child is having trouble, is challenged by something environmental, something sensory, something social. giving a hug, giving space, honoring what they need to feel their best goes such a long way. Forcing solutions, being very willful, my way, it only makes the reaction bigger. And I'm, again, we're speaking very generally, but co-regulation is a real strategy when challenged by a child who's struggling. Okay, the two programs that we have.
I just wanted to add on to that quickly. And I think when you speak of co-regulation, it's something so innate to us, but it also is something that's developed, through our adolescence and our, relationships with others. But I always like to give the example of like when a baby is on a parent's chest and they're like beating really fast, right? Like that's an example of like the mom is really nervous and then the baby's heart blood pressure goes up. They give the example. So think about if you're going somewhere new and you guys don't know how to get there, model, I'm not sure where I'm going, but I think I will find the way. So I think those are really great strategies there.
Yeah, I guess you would say that our ability to co-regulate with all others is really the model that our children see, how we interact with others when we are frustrated or feeling disappointed. I mean, that in itself is the best model, how we handle ourselves. So these programs are really easy to carry over because they're very visual. And our children, I'll never forget, in school or a continuing education class, someone, a therapist was sharing how so much of what we say is not processed by a child. In next slides, we'll talk about eye-level communication, but we tend to talk a lot as adults, and we do not realize that so much of our language it's a lot for a child to process. So these programs are very visual because a color or a picture represents a feeling or a response. So, for example, I'm feeling blue. I'm feeling tired, sick, bored, hurt. I'm feeling red, angry, wild, inconsolable. You look green. I am so proud of you and your green zone. You look happy, you look calm, you look focused, you look ready. Liam, you look like you're becoming very red. You look like, I think we need to get back to yellow. I think we need to maybe sit in our calming, cozy corner so we can feel green again. It changes everything for the child. It's not you are this, they do not like these negative words, or you are, you're doing this. When, it looks like your engine is running too fast. It looks like your engine is running really low. Maybe we need a crunchy, cold snack. Or you look like, your engine is running really, really fast. Maybe we need to dim the lights and listen to your audiobook for a moment. Even in the tone of how you present these charts and these pictures will change and help a child regulate. So in therapy, we create the chart. I'll just tell you typically how we would go about this. We create the chart together with the child. We cut out pictures from magazines or clip art, or we do social stories, and we talk very much in depth about the colors or the engine speeds.
Danielle, can I interrupt you for a second? Usually I wait until the end for questions, but a very timely question came up. What if a child is colorblind?
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
How can a parent who has a child who's colorblind adapt this very effective sounding system in a different way?
I would say then the alert program is the better option versus the zones, because the alert program can be used with pictures. So typically with the alert program, we use cars. We use these like a car that's like putting like very slow. We use a car that's stopped and just kind of moving regularly. And then we have this car that's like zooming. For younger children, we use Tigger, Pooh Bear, and Eeyore. So Eeyore is a very low engine speed, Tigger is high, and Winnie the Pooh is just right. We can relate the alert program to many different pictures. So something that is really intense, slow, even pictures of children in action, a child that is angry versus a child that is kind of shut down, bored, distracted, looking out a window, and then a child that feels just right. So pictures are used for the alert program. And I think that would be the best option, in terms of these regulatory visual programs. So yeah, if that helps at all.
I think visuals are a great way for children, overall, just with processing. But I think I actually have a student who is colorblind on my caseload right now, and his school program uses it consistently, throughout all the classrooms. And we adapted it so it's like polka dots on one, stripes on another. And he helped develop like what symbol basically makes the most sense for being like in the yellow zone. And I think that's really nice too, just so he's still able to access the discussion that's coming around with it during the day. So I think it's always a mix too. As you said, Danielle, you can use both.
Right.
What works best for your child.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I usually wait till questions at the end, but seemed relevant to just pause to answer that one. So thanks.
I think we'll move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we could just go to the next slide.
Whoops. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Okay, next slide is.
There's something about saying like, how's your engine to like young kids and they just get it.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And I find it, like I say it with like other adults right now.
It's becoming very general, like, just the concept of self-regulation and coping, developing coping strategies. Look how much more intervention we're all getting.
Yeah. Even just the discussion.
Right.
All right, are you seeing the problem solving slide now?
No,
not yet.
Oh, did the whole thing disappear?
no, we
it's
still
on
see zones.
zones of.
There we
Okay.
go.
Here we are.
Okay.
Okay, so some of the strategies that now we want you to take home with, we really want you to feel that you can carry some of this over. Obviously, I want to just share availability by email, going through certain scenarios and talking through these strategies. So problem solving situations. We spoke about co-regulation, the power of your own self-control and modeling, the way you interact with others in the home, the way caregivers speak to each other, the ability to apologize, the ability to pause and kind of, instead of react, respond. Calming zones. So funny. I'm always dimming my lights in my house and it's clear that I'm overstimulated. My husband's like, all the lights are off. I'm trying to calm the environment because it's so overstimulating around me. So we try to, I also think I'm an OT. So I'm always like, I'm overstimulated. But we try to create calming strategies for the overstimulated child, right? So that when a child is dysregulated, we think about ways to help them calm down. Calming zones. I love those little tents, those little Pottery Barn tents, stringing dim lights, white noise machines, beanbag chairs are very proprioceptive. Wrapping your kiddos up in a blanket and playing burrito games and giving input, proprioceptive input is a sensory strategy that is very calming. So if your child is a crasher, a mover, loves hanging, loves being upside down, loves all of the movement input, they're seeking proprioceptive input directly impacts internal organization. When you were internally organized, that's why we love massage. That's why we love yoga. That's why we love, all the like that deep grounding input is very organizing. You feel so much more calm. So we try to give that to our children in appropriate ways. I will say in school, one of the biggest impacts that an OT can have, or like that a professional can have, is how to integrate this into the classroom, into the schedule, in a socially appropriate way. Like I'm very honest on now that some of these strategies are not always realistic. We're not, we have to make sure that we're providing realistic strategies for our kids to regulate throughout the day. So we can talk a lot about those strategies. We're going to continue to talk about those strategies. Sensory strategies and a sensory diet. These are within each sensory subsystem are ways that we help a child organize themselves and feel more regulated. So sucking, when you think about an infant sucking is still an organizing, calming input. So smoothies in the morning with a straw, sucking yogurt, sucking a sports water bottle on the desk throughout the day. Sucking is organizing. Sucking sugar-free, I don't want to say candies, but, mints, or sucking on a lollipop, sugar-free lollipop. Oral input, oral stimulation is calming. Tactile input, lots of shaving cream activities and kinetic sand and loveys, fidgets. These are all calming strategies for our children to calm from a tactile standpoint. Auditory, white noise, classical light music, auditory books, soft music in the background while doing work, white noise to filter out information, auditory information when a child is overstimulated by external noise. That's very helpful. And then just to go back to the PROPE again, heavy work for our children is very organizing. For a child that feels dysregulated, we always talk about mini trampolines, wheelbarrow walking, gymnastic classes, yoga, and karate. Those are great extracurriculars for a child that becomes dysregulated. They're organized, they're structured, they're grounding. What else is proprioceptive? Like we said, joint compression, compression. We love as OTs talking about compression through even garments, Under Armour, materials that feel good, materials that provide compression feel good. It's organizing. What else? We talked about do we talk about, even lavender smells? You can really dive even into different aromas in the environment. Think about ways that help you calm down, and then you start to kind of process and look into what works best for my child.
I agree with everything you said there. I think, again, like having that awareness is really the first step. And I think you brought up a really good point, like what is functional in the moment and like throughout the day. And I think you did a great job in saying, like fidgets, like chewing gum, different things like that, having access to those. And I think that's something that parents and other providers really need to implement too. So it's not just in OT, but it's also in speech, in the classroom. So I think OTs are a great resource for that. I constantly find myself being like, this is what I'm noticing. How do you think from a regulatory sensory standpoint, I can support this child?
And I wanted to just add one other piece, like one other take home, because this is something we talk to parents a lot in OT. I think that for all of us, we want that fix. We want to see the result. I relate sensory processing and self-regulation to diabetes. You're not monitoring your insulin one time. You are consistently and intermittently monitoring the insulin. Just like regulation, we look at our children and we look at what part of their day they feel their best. When they're doing what do they feel their best? How do we give that to them and dose it throughout their routine? Now, the OT and the interventionists, your speech therapists, your PTs, your educators, your tutors, they can do it within their session. But the big take home, and that's what's so cool about you being here today, is that the intermittent input is what helps create the strategies long term and helps them then say, okay, yeah, I need to put a piece of gum in my mouth, or yeah, I need my sports water bottle. I need my lovey, I need my thing. So it's just something to think about.
Okay, so now let's get into like the tools to use during these instances of dysregulation. So I have the red flags. First, you need to be aware of the red flags in your child, and it will manifest differently in each child. So you want to see, maybe your older son starts to withdraw, but your younger son starts to become, needs to move a lot. So I think being able to differentiate is really important there. So the most important tool is to just stay calm. Danielle discussed it earlier that your child is going to imitate your reactions at first because you're their only model for these very early on in life. So you want to really just remain calm. And that means checking your body language, right? Are you closed off? Are you is your face furrowed? Are your arms crossed? Is there a change in your voice, right? I had a child once say, I have a strict voice. And he was like, I want to hear Kat's fun voice. And then I was like, oh, I have a different one. So I think those things, we're not always thinking about, but that is our biggest tool, is to take that step back, check our body, check our overall demeanor, and just give them a second sometimes too, before you go into it. Give yourself a second to think about, okay, how am I going to handle this? What is the best way to approach this? So then I think modeling behavior, and I think this looks different based on different ages, right? So with a 10-year-old, you can use more language like, I'm nervous about going back to school and being with new kids in my classroom. And then say, how can I make this better? I can make a plan to see an old friend that's not in my class, those kind of things. But that's going to look different with a 3-year-old, right? If you have a 3-year-old that's upset and throwing a tantrum, they don't want to leave the pool, anything, you can, model I'm sad I have to leave now. I will come back, or I'll have another opportunity. So it's really it changes. And it's also just, using language that your child uses or understands, not making it that different, just kind of that self-talk throughout the day. I often use words like feel, right? So it's tuning into a feeling or emotion. I feel excited to go on a field trip. Just kind of giving that feel, I think, is a nice verb to have them tune in. Feel is an emotion or this more abstract feeling, especially for younger ones, because it can be abstract, what's excited, what's worried. So I think kind of calling attention to it with that word is really helpful. I think I'm going to just go up. Warning signs of transitions, right? Change is hard, and change is hard, not just for little kids, but it's hard for adults, and we're in charge of our, we dictate our own lives. And think about it for a young child who has to go to school now for the first time for 6 hours and they don't know what to expect. They don't know where their cubby is going to be. Everything is so new and they're not in control, right? It feels like it's all out of their control. So understanding when a transition or is going to be difficult and then providing options to help the child feel more in control. So it can be a big transition, like going to a new school, or it can be more of like a play date ending, or, you know, like your movie is going to be over. It's time for bath. So then, you know, giving options. Would you like to, you know, take a bath first or have 10 minutes to play, right? It lets your child feel like they're in control and they're out of control, not like physically, but, you know, they're not controlling their days. So I think it's really important to give them this sense of purpose there. I think when you're doing it, I think making the expectation very clear. And again, using less language is more in these moments of like your child becoming dysregulated, or your child you see having a hard time. A lot of times when children are in this fight or flight state, are they like, I think like, what are they even seeing? Are they seeing red? What are they hearing from me? Right. So if I'm saying, Danielle, you need to go upstairs and get this, it's like, it becomes meaningless at some point. So I think giving a really clear direction, and using very simple language, like pick up magnet tiles, right? Like if like they crashed their siblings' magnet tiles because, you know, they were annoyed, who knows, pick up magnet tiles. And then like keep it at that, right? If that's for like a younger child, but just keeping it very simple. I do also think, you know, this, I've been talking a lot about engagement to give to a child during these moments, but I also think active ignoring is like, and Danielle brought it up earlier, it's a huge tool that you can use. And it's really hard too at times because if you see like a more of like a maladaptive kind of behavior, like a child running away from the dinner table, right? And playing, and they think it's funny. Does the child want you to, you know, is the child think it's funny that you're getting upset, you know, that dinner time is interrupted and now everyone's getting up from the table? Or if you ignore it and don't call on that and speak more of like, I love the way your sister is eating this, right? And kind of give praise back to the positive, while highlighting what the expectation is. I think that's really a strong tool. And sometimes like, you know, Danielle's made the comment with her husband and she was like, when I look at him and I just, you know, I need a minute. Or, you know, a lot of times I'll look at a coworker or something and I'll be like, I'm trying so hard not to react right now. Or I'll just like turn my head away from the child and just like, sometimes I'll laugh, sometimes, you know, it's really challenging. So I think knowing the importance of it though, and how you can, how much of an impact it has on your child is really important. I also want to talk about eye-level communication. Eye-level communication means getting eye to eye with your child. So they talk about Princess Diana because she was the first royal actually to ever give eye to eye communication with a child, because I guess royals are above. I'm not really sure why, but that was so they always give that example. So it's showing you that, you know, I'm physically not as scary, right? I'm not towering above you. I'm coming down to you, right? Like we are on like the same level. We're here together. And it gives more of that like problem solving, like mentality. Whereas like a lot of times, you know, you think of someone yelling down at you. So this is really important when you talk to your child. You're showing that you're giving them your undivided attention, right? You're there with them. You're not dismissing them and these feelings. And I think this is really important. just to use when communicating with children, not just during moments of dysregulation, but all the time, right? Like as much as we can. Like if you're playing on the carpet with a child versus you're standing over, them at a desk, like think about how that may feel differently. And just those non-spoken rules of language, like the social language of you being down with them.
Right. I was just going to say really quickly, like, just like the language, even kind of looping back to the alert program, it's like, it looks like your engine's running really fast. Maybe you need a hug, like eye level communication, referring to a visual that they understand, and then giving them that security. Like, I am here for you. I know you're feeling out of control. I know you're in a fight or flight response and you're safe. And I'm here to give you a hug to help you. But not giving 10 options and rationalizing, okay, if you calm down, I'll give you this. It's we tend to do a lot of that because we want it to end ourselves because we're getting dysregulated. So really to pause and let them work through it. When you're ready for a hug, I'm here for you. And, letting them know that you are there for them. You're not angry with them regarding their inability to respond appropriately, but you're also not talking about it, right? Like you're staying very clear about what the expectation is, but you are also a safe space for them.
So yeah, just to go off that, exactly as you said, Danielle, you want to validate the feeling. You want to give it meaning, whether that's labeling it like it looks like you're feeling angry or saying you're in the red zone right now. And then you want to validate it, saying, I understand you're feeling XYZ. A lot of times I'll say things like, I can't imagine for my older kids how hard it must feel to, have something happen, just to, give them that this is happening to them. And sometimes it's hard for us to understand too, what it feels like. And I think when we just use language, giving a vocabulary, modeling these words, these different emotions, but not just the emotions, but the strategies too, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm going to take a shower, right? So you're seeing that causal effect there. A lot of times I've had a long day and I just want to go on a run, right? If I have young kids at home or any age kids, like I had a long day at work, I need to go for a run and then I'll come home, but I need to take care of my regulatory status first.
It's a great example to show them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's functional and it's a healthy one because I think, a lot of us love that coffee or, I love a croissant, like when I don't know why, but
Chocolate. Right.
so I think, yeah, describing your experiences and then you can start to talk about how it feels within your body for your older children and even for some younger.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to give you guys some examples of language I like to use or I often find myself saying, if we could just go to the next slide, please. So I see that you're upset. You're allowed to feel that way. I'm here when you're ready to talk. Again, you're giving them that I'm here, but at the control when you are ready. Try to find a level of sameness. I would also feel disappointed if my play date canceled or, if I didn't get to go somewhere. I said that you have a hard time. What can we do to make it easier? And then you're incorporating some problem solving, right? Like we know this is going to be more challenging for us. How can we set us up for success? How can we make it better moving forward? So it's not just this big, scary thing that we have to do that always makes us feel in the yellow to red zone. We can keep going, please. So a lot of times when children, are super like in this red and we can't really get them back right away, I try to just, language can be really challenging to access. Think about it. Like if we're like having like a really heated political argument with someone, and I don't know, like you can't think of the words to even convey because your neurotransmitters, you're firing, your whole body's tense. Think about what it's like for a 3-year-old who just had their toy that they find really regulating taken away, right? So maybe give them a minute and see, you know, point to what color you feel, point to the face you feel. And then that's again where using visuals can be really helpful before children have the language. So starting it, you know, way pre-literacy. And then again, what color are you? Point to the color you're feeling. Again, you're giving it meaning without adding that higher level language to process. And then again, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. Really just the validation there.
Okay, that was a tremendous amount of very, very helpful information. We have just a few moments left, and there were a few questions that came up. One parent asked, how do you recommend talking with children about the fact that their co-parent does not model healthy regulation? This is very specific, without bad-mouthing them, obviously. So do either of you have any tips for that parent?
I think,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
I saw that question during the presentation. I thought about it. So something that the first thing that comes to mind is that how your partner handles themselves has nothing to do with how you handle yourself. So your response to the child on a repetitive basis has just as much bearing on that child as maybe a co-parent's inappropriate response. Without being passive aggressive or starting trouble, I would say, it looks like, caregiver A or B is a little frustrated. And sometimes we all get frustrated. It looks like they're a little angry right now. Maybe I have felt angry too. So you're not necessarily validating how they're acting. You're not also increasing the dysregulation within the setting. I would remember that we can't control others and others' behavior, and then model appropriate behavior and have positive language surrounding the inappropriate response, right? Labeling feelings. I'm sorry if that makes you feel nervous, just being very deliberate about the language and strategy on how to support them in that moment.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of all of that, your reaction to that other co-parent, that's serving such a huge model right there, how you react to those negative emotions, because your child is going to experience a lot of, bad moods and irritability from others throughout life. So it's good practice and exposure and problem solving.
Okay, I think we have time maybe for one more question. You referenced earlier, Danielle, about sometimes as an OT, you realize a child might need additional support from a different provider, like a speech therapist or a social worker. How can a parent dissect who they should go to for support?
It's a good question. I think that when we work with children and we really build a rapport with that child, a therapist typically would be able to make a recommendation. I think if a parent is not getting services just yet, talking to your pediatrician, talking to an educator, talking to reaching out to a therapist and talking through, I'll say, when I get a referral and it is about regulation, we talk a lot on that phone call before diving right into OT. There's definitely a place for regulation for OT, but there's a lot of other areas that typically could benefit as well. So for example, like on our website, we have our social workers page. So much of what she does focuses on regulation as well. The family dynamic, the family relationships, co-regulation strategies for parents. Yes, we have to give our kids tools to have appropriate regulatory responses, but there's a lot of intervention out there for the family as well, I would say.
That's great. Thank you. Kat, anything to add?
Yeah, I don't think it's something you can ever look at, under a microscope or see in isolation, right? And I think that's why so many different disciplines are involved in it, right? Because it manifests differently, and it's just something that's all encompassing, right? You may talk about regulation with a therapist, like a psychotherapist, or from a sensory perspective, or from emotional. But I think, as you said, Danielle, it's like, you need to have that family dynamic and really have your own awareness of what it is that dysregulates you and your effect on your child. So I think, obviously, if you are seeking out help, I think finding out more and talking to more professionals is a great place to start.
So I want to be mindful that we are just about finished with our time, slightly over even. So I want to just mention that a few people asked in the Q&A if they would have access to this recording. So Smart City Kids has a YouTube channel. So if you just give us a couple of days, you can view this recording again on the Smart City Kids YouTube channel. And I want to thank Kat and thank Danielle very, very much for their wisdom today. Hopefully the parents attending left feeling armed with some additional tools for their toolbox. And please know, parents, that we are here for you. Kat, Danielle, and I are here for you in your parenting journey. So please do not hesitate to reach out if any of us could provide further support. And we hope to see you at our upcoming workshops. So thank you all very much for attending. And thank you, Kat. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for having us,
Hey,
Erica.
everyone. Thanks for coming.
Danielle, is fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Bye, everyone.